Everybody, welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series, and my name is Timothy Gager, and we're in our fall season, and just want to let people know that in January we're switching to Thursday nights, so we virtual Thursday Dire Literary Series, and so those that have like your stationery or business cards, you're gonna have to change them. And the t-shirts, you can no longer wear that Virtual Fridays t-shirts that you just see all over town. Anyway, my guest tonight is a veteran of our series, Kimberly Ann Priest, and Kimberly has a new book, and I would like to kind of show you. I would kind of like to introduce her to you and show you her stuff. So there she is. And she is the author of Slaughter the One Bird, which she read for us in 2021, Parrot Flower in 2021, Still Life from Pank, and White Goat, Black Sheep, Finishing Line Press, the winner of the New American Press 2019 Heartland Poetry Prize. Her work has appeared in journals such as North Dakota Quarterly, Salamander, Slipstream, Berkeley Poetry Review, Borderland, and many others. She's the associate poetry editor for the Nimrod International Journal of Prose and Poetry. And of course, you want to find out more about her, it's KimberlyAnnPriest.com. And there you can also find out a little bit about her most recent book, which is The Optimist Shelters in Place. So I'd like to turn it over to Kimberly, and welcome.
Thank you. So here's the book in physical form. Really proud of this book. I did not get much chance to promote it. So thank you, Timothy, for having me back on here to show it off a bit. Laura Page, who you probably don't know, did the painting for this book, and she's a wonderful artist. So I'm really happy with what she sent me for the cover of this. Yeah, so this came out in April, I think, this year. And I had my first full length, which I read for your program, come out the July before that. And, with the end of COVID season and just all the changes we'd been through, I just got kind of worn out and I dropped off the face of the planet a bit. So I haven't done much with this book, but I'm going to, I actually read this at a local venue here in Maine about a month ago, and I called it pandemic poetry. And then I read the poems, and a couple of people bought the book and they said, that's not pandemic poetry. And they said, this is not what we thought of as pandemic poetry. Well, I'll have to tell the truth. I don't think I really read a lot of pandemic poetry. I'm not really sure what that means now at this point, because apparently I didn't write it either. So it's something different. I didn't read a lot of poems about the pandemic while we were in it. I wanted like a bit of a mental break from it. So I think what I wrote was a book that is more about loneliness as an epidemic in the United States, which it has become increasingly with the advent of social media, which should bring us together more, but it has tended to do quite the opposite, because we tend not to engage in physical spaces even as much like we're doing right now. But it's a different kind of knowing and connecting with people, and we do lose some things in this kind of transaction. So it's dealing with that. And it's also, I guess I could call this a post-divorce book too, which is probably more depressing than a pandemic book, I think. But there's a lot of, the poetry is a lot about relationships and the loss of relationship. And I was going through that at the beginning of the pandemic. And when the pandemic started, I wrote this book in the first couple of months. I just suddenly, the weight of, the fact that I was already feeling alone where I was, and, very isolated from communities that I'd been part of before, due to divorce. And then that just sort of magnified in my experience because of the pandemic, and realizing now I can't even meet new people. Now I can't get out in the world and like even build a new community. So it was just a very, very weighty time for me. So the poems that I am going to read are more relational. I think I decided for this reading, I have, and you'll hear some of it, there's poetry in here that's a little bit more political in its, and the way that it's processing the pandemic experience, having to do with the way that we became so divided as a country. But I'm going to read about 6. They're very short. And then Timothy's going to ask me terrifying questions about the book. So here's the first one. The optimist has no plans to alter her routine. She still spends an hour on the treadmill, reads early morning, makes pour over coffee, and never finds anything to watch on TV. This is the same life she had before the virus's intrusion. Never a sniffle or cough, never a whole day in bed. The covers are pulled tight over the pillows before breakfast, as always, the dishes washed, recycling stacked, and she still makes time for a bit of personal prepping, lip gloss, messy bun, a spritz of rose water to brighten her face. If today she cannot manage a smile, she will post an old selfie somewhere just to be consistent. On the windowsill, her plants curl over in response to this gray April weekday, and she wonders how to help them stay cheered. For instance, there are quotes she wants to share to social media platforms, lifting the spirit of anyone despairing, such as, mindset is everything, the best way out is always through, the most reliable way to predict the future is to create it, but thinks better of this. Instead, she draws a circle on a piece of notebook paper, adds a smiling mouth and 2 eyes in its center, then borders it with lines of varied length, tapes it to the window, waits for the foliage to unravel, look up. The optimist doesn't wash her hair. To be honest, she thinks about death often. Each time a leaf falls, a bell rings, the sky clouds over but does not rain. They call it a plague, and now she wishes someone had listened when she told them her story, most of it about conservation. For instance, going nowhere, she decides to shower daily but does not wash her hair to save shampoo and avoid the damaging rigors of washing. There are so many ways to be violent when trying not to be violent. Last month, she reads, there were 4,000 suicides in this country alone. These facts keep her mind busy. At the University of Michigan, NODA was created to ensure everyone died with someone at their bedside. When her grandmother departed several years ago, a granddaughter was with her, just one. A veteran in Portland, Maine is working out his traumas with poetry. She reads after his wife has left him. A little boy clinging to his arm in a photo puts her mind at ease. How convenient her apartment went out there, the dying. How American avoidance, realities we don't have to believe because they are unseen. How lucky is a universe not biblical in its workings. If a death angel passed by our doorpost looking for blood, he'd find plenty on the bath towels, the kitchen towels, the bed sheets, the floor. The optimist rereads Mary Oliver's dog songs. The experts say another month indoors and maybe longer before the worst of the virus is over. She's been expecting to hear of someone she knows dying but hasn't. She listens for her plants to understand their conversations this tepid Thursday afternoon when the sun is hidden from view. Or is it Friday? Whatever happened to excitement for the weekend? Cracking open a bottle of craft beer she's been saving for a special occasion, she decides this is a special occasion, a possibly the weekend, but who knows, party. She raises her beer to her favorite philodendron, embracing the possible, declaring sarcastically, we're not dead yet. Each moment that slips by seems apocalyptic, but not apocalyptic. The birds chirping tunes the way they always do in May. It's a little rainy, but this is quite normal. and some buds are starting to bloom on command. In the apartment above her, a violinist practices as usual, though perhaps a little longer. She pulls a book of poems off a shelf. Percy is running, digging holes in the sand. The optimist celebrates Mother's Day. First a cup of coffee, then the birds, now a single white rose perched in a vase. Her daughter makes carrot cake and visits for 2 days. She snuggles in her favorite chair, blanket wrapped, and listens to chatter outside and inside, her daughter full of speech. Music, a note and a card to tell her of a mother's strength. So much admiration. For years, she's been waiting for magic, for life to happen in some surprisingly beautiful way. The frosting is homemade. She hears a kettle of water for Moroccan mint tea, then sits beside her daughter on a kitchen bar stool. The death toll is receding in her country this serene May day. They sip and nibble together, talking about the future, together like sisters, essential. The optimist world is transformed by one phone call. She stares at the bed her daughter slept in during her visit, examines the room now tidy, takes stock of the extra things she owns stored in the guest closet, the way the space seems to suggest absence. Divorce feels like a casket missing its body. Nothing to gather into one's arms for a good long cry. It's like a war ending, limbs shattered and left in a foreign country. You can't go back there. She hadn't spoken to her son much since the family made its ending. Now a pandemic, now all the questions about what her life has meant. Even the clothes she wore while married seem a little bloody, with memories she wants to let go of but never forget. She finds an earring left on top of the bedside table, pearl-studded and golden. Tiny, she rolls it between a finger and thumb. As her phone begins to vibrate against the kitchen counter, she goes out to retrieve it, sees the name pulsing on the screen, holds it gently, answers. Last one. The optimist remembers what is needed to feel essential. She finds $1 in a pocket, feels the thrill of a child, wonders how long it's been since her hand explored this space. The last thing her husband said to her was, "No one will want you after this." Maybe he was right. She turns the pocket inside out to see what else it has collected, finds only lint. She takes this as a metaphor for value, folding it back into its place. She'll have choices to make when the virus is over. For instance, this apartment has not been so good for her plants. Things grow in a balance of sunlight and shade, and their need of each is different. She drops green medicine into the water she will give them today, wanting to believe that the future will be normal. But already, she observes, paranoia has rooted itself into our new forms of faith since divorce. She has also believed the things he told her. Words are chemical in origin, powerful when mixed. A spider plant thrives on a shelf in her bedroom, having everything it needs to sprawl and reproduce. It's May 22nd, a gloomy Friday afternoon. Her daughter will use FaceTime to reach her in an hour. She'll answer with the smile that brightens the screen, an enormous and pre-planned hello.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And I love how every title is The Optimists and how that fits together with the book. During the pandemic, well, actually, first of all, whoever said that those aren't pandemic poems, I think they're a little off in that assessment.
Okay. I don't mind them living in several spaces, so.
Well, I think the difference is up in Portland, Maine, they're isolating all the time because it's so damn cold up there. So it's really it's just normal poems for them.
Could be.
Now, when you say the optimist, right? Were you an optimist during the pandemic, or were you saying that you were an optimist in order to give yourself hope? In other words, did you have a difficult time during the pandemic or not?
I think both are true. I am naturally an optimistic person, but I've had a lot of life circumstances to like so many things that could have tanked me several times. And and I still have times when I grieve, divorce being really the least of those things. So it's I had a very hard time at the beginning of the pandemic. Like, it was excruciating because I had returned to Michigan, where I had, born, raised, got married. My kids were there. I had returned there from a job that I'd had in another part of the country. And I was back in the zone of all the trauma, all the things that had happened, and around people that had through dismissal and really just not caring about my situation had failed me. So when the pandemic started, first off, they're saying lockdown, and I had already experienced that trauma in my marriage where I'd been, literally not allowed to leave the house at times. So I was having panic attacks at the beginning of the pandemic. And that's why I sat down and, I get through life writing poetry. Like, I get through all this stuff. And that's when I decided to start writing. And I am very naturally an optimistic person, but I think the pandemic was hard on all of us. And for me in particular, it was just magnifying this already feeling of isolation that I had and I had been carrying and working through pretty well. And then, COVID happens, and I was kind of in this place of, oh, I didn't need this right now, which is very selfish, like it's something that affected us all, but it just felt like a nail in the coffin of my healing process at that point. And that's when I decided to throw all of my belongings in a storage unit and spend the COVID time at an Airbnb in the woods in Maine. And it was a much better place for me to be during the pandemic, not surrounded.
Now, was it easier for you to produce poems during that pandemic time, or not? Your production rate good?
My production rate would make people jealous. It is always good. I finished an entire book of poems this summer. And that's pretty, I do about a book a year. I've been doing this for 10 years and I have 10 books. They're not all published. So I don't know that my production rate changed. I do think that, I wrote this book, threw my stuff in storage, went to Maine. And I do think going to Maine allowed me the distance I needed to write some of the things I needed to write about my experiences in Michigan. So it changed, I think, what I would have been able to accomplish.
Now, you've also spent a lot of time recently in Pittsburgh. So between Pittsburgh, Maine, and Michigan, you've been kind of nomadic. Why move around so much?
Well, I am trying to locate myself. I want to say relocate. It's more complicated than that. But being in Michigan is very problematic for me. It has been. It's just the stress and depression that I can go into there because of the past has been too overwhelming. So I've stayed away. I'm staying away from Michigan more than I'm being nomadic, but I realize most people see it as nomadic. Naturally, I love to travel. But really I'm trying to maybe keep my emotional life safe right now and have the distance I need from the stories that, things I've been through.
Jeff asks about your new collection. Did you enter any hindsight into the editing of these poems?
Enter any hindsight into the editing. I'm not sure what he means by enter any hindsight. Maybe clarify.
Jeff, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, like so these seem very time and place, like sort of in the idea, like the early pandemic, then going back later and editing them, like any like revelations, like, oh, here's actually what that feeling meant later. I have more clarity on what I was feeling at the time, that kind of thing. And did that change the poems themselves?
So the poems, they didn't change. I tend to write a draft of a book, just kind of, I write all the way through it. And then I go back and there is obviously editing that is done. So what's in the book now is what, happened in the editorial process. But by the time the book was published, this was already set. So the poems themselves didn't change. In terms of revelation, I don't think it's so much like it wasn't so much like a revelation about what I was feeling at the time. I knew very well what I was feeling at the time. I was feeling terrible at the time. But I do think that when I read them again, the weight of what I was feeling hit me differently, because I was no longer in that weighty space. Like I had released a lot of that grief, coming to Maine hiking, like it gave me the opportunity to release a lot of it. So when I looked back at him, I always have this experience where I look back at the person I was at the moment those poems were written, and I have compassion for that person, because I'm like, wow, that was painful to feel. Usually when I'm in the moment, I am, maybe making excuses or like feeling guilty for feeling the way that I'm feeling about things. But then when I look back at what I've written, maybe a year or two down the road, I realized that everything I was feeling was very logical for what I was experiencing at the time. So always a good feeling, sometimes also a feeling of, oh, how did you survive that? That's some of my other books though. But yeah.
Well, you and I have talked in the past about poetry community and really wanting to have a supportive community. Where do you find that community now?
So I have more recently, like very recently, I've started connecting with more women in the community on a one-on-one. And that was, ironically, that's not something I had a lot of before. A lot of my teachers were men. Just a lot of, my Dennis Heinrichsen is a wonderful poet, and he was I call him my poet dad, because our friendship is so strong. But he was my mentor for quite a while. And like, it seemed to always be that there were more men poets that I was around. So, I did have really great experiences in my university and colleges, and they were my community. But it's hard after you leave those circles, it's hard to find poets again. And just in the last, I don't know, even 4 months, I've just really started connecting with a lot more women who have lived through some of the things I've lived through and also write poetry. And it's online like this, a lot of us are isolated in our poet bubbles wherever we are. But for me, especially being a Midwestern poet where there's not poets everywhere and poetry events going on, a lot of it is from a distance.
Yeah, well, based on your new connections with women, I saw you post something on Facebook about men in the poetry community and how there was emotional abuse attached to a particular community. Did that draw you more into women poets, or is that a common occurrence in poetry communities?
The incident that you're speaking of, it was kind of a I want to call it a unique incident. I hope it was one particular incident that sort of I needed to post something for my protection, and that was mostly what I was posting that for. And I did actually end up connecting with more women because of that incident. It's
So
hard.
did other women come to you and share their stories?
Women share their stories with me everywhere I go. In this particular case, it was more stories of stuff within the lit community. But because of what I write about, I just frequently, women will tell me about experiences that they've had with violence, things that have happened to them. That's been happening to me for years now, just because of what I write. I've connected with more women in the lit world. I mean, my book came out, my full length came out a year ago that covers domestic violence and things like that. So I am finding more women in the literary community that have had these experiences as well. So yeah, it's a connector. I can't say if this incident that I went through is a common occurrence. For one, I'm new in the literary world. The fact that it happened so quickly, though, is kind of frustrating. But I will say that when I was new in academia, happened right away. This isn't a lit world thing. So
Is it a woman's thing, as women are being preyed upon in a way? Because I know Michael Livy, who in the Journal of Psychotherapy said there's a pattern of trauma and being preyed upon.
Yes.
So
yes, 100%. I mean, I've been dealing with it since I was young. It never stops. It's almost like having a part-time job, having to navigate what different circumstances where you're not really sure what's going on, which is kind of the point of those circumstances. And yeah, I would say, I mean, you know, we've been talking about it more in the media, and I still don't think it's talked about nearly as much as it happens. So I don't know in the lit community, because this was the one experience that I had, but I've had 2 or 3 things happen in academia as a professor. And I think what's the scariest part for me, and probably for a lot of other women, is that we're all trying to survive and, you know, make a living off of the things we're doing, like the writing, like teaching. And when men are preying upon women, one of the tactics that they use is to threaten our livelihood. And that is so common. And with this particular incident in the lit world, what I have learned by finding out other stories involving the same individual is that he will ruin the reputations of the people that he's interacted with, the women that he has preyed upon. So it's, you know, and here you are trying to sell books, and you want to have a good reputation in the lit community, but this is frequently, and I couldn't speak from the opposite side of the coin, but this is frequently what I've experienced is I have to worry then about what these men are going to do when I say no.
so the threat to your livelihood. What I want to do is, why is that so difficult? All right, let me rephrase that, because the question went in a direction I didn't want it to go to. You're very well educated. You have an MFA, and you still talk about being on a tightrope to just kind of make a living. Why for a woman is it so hard in 2022?
Well, I think everybody knows that in academia, unless you've hit the jackpot and, you know, you've got that coveted tenure track job, we're all pretty broke. For one, that goes for men and women. It's not a well-paying job unless you're tenure, especially in writing, you know, English, the humanities, anything like that. So there's that tightrope. We've got COVID that just altered the economy enormously, so that, you know, what I had before is not what I have now. But as a woman, like I said, protecting my job and my resources and my reputation, those kinds of things in any professional setting is a part-time job, because as soon as, you know, you're attracting attention not attracting, I don't attract it, but I get attention all the time that I don't want. And I don't even always know that it's coming. You know, I don't know that the attention I'm getting is going to turn into bad attention. So there's this constant like exhaustion of finding out that a situation is going to be different than what you thought it was. It's just tiring. It's just very tiring. So, you know, I want to be accepted, like what you just heard tonight with the reading, like these are my skills. You know, I want to just be the writer. I want to just be the professional, a professional person in the community. I want to be engaged that way. I don't always want to be hit on. So, you know, like, it's just, I think that should be obvious, but, and even with that, there's ways of doing that. And those ways are usually not what happens. So
Yeah, men are real stupid about obvious clues. So John Westig has a comment about adjunct professors getting underpaid. Do you think the title of adjunct professor and the role of that should be eliminated, and everyone gets paid a living wage?
absolutely, I do. I am still considered an adjunct, but I am actually full-time non-tenure. So I'm getting paid a full-time wage. It's not amazing. And as a single person, it's, you know, it's definitely more difficult. But when I was a part-time adjunct, like John has mentioned, I think at one place I got $1,200 a semester. Teaching, yeah. At another place I got $3,300. I mean, it's interesting, like the adjunct pay is just all over the spectrum. But the spectrum still is all going to be below about 5K. So, they don't pay anything for part-time teachers. And yeah, I absolutely think it should go. Graduate instruction is fine because you're getting your graduate degree paid for. That's almost a full-time wage, or is a full-time wage. But I think after that, these jobs should be offered full-time. People need to survive.
I mean, part of it is taking advantage of the situation, and but I think there's also a piece of it that in higher education, they're just pumping out more graduates than there are jobs. So, is there any way to reverse that trend? Is there any way to fix this?
I don't think that I am getting paid enough to even answer that question. I think I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think there is. I think the answers are simple. Like, capitalism is based on people who have the opportunity making more money, people who don't make less, right? Like it's just the way it is. And people can take advantage of that system so easily. People are born into advantage, other people are not. Like it's just a really messed up system. You have to get rid of the whole system if we're going to change these sorts of things. And I really think that that's probably something that's never going to be solved in my lifetime.
Well, you have to, I mean, workers have to revolt. There has to be a way that people can get higher education degrees and go to the people directly.
Are we going to start a movement right now?
No, you know what? I hate to be one of those damn bloody socialists, but let me tell you, people that work and work hard should get paid for their work. So that's more of a Marxist. I'm a bloody Marxist.
I agree 100%. Yes, I'm right with you there. I think our system is it's terrible. It's all based on greed.
No benefits too for adjuncts, according to Joseph.
And thankfully, no, there's not. Thankfully, again, like because I'm full-time, I do have benefits. So I'm grateful for the position that I have. My own department would argue we should all get paid more, but they don't have any authority over that. So I consider myself fortunate in the academic world right now, but also in the economic world, it's exhausting.
Well, it was wonderful talking economics with you and education with you and gender power structure with you and also poetry with you. Your wonderful, wonderful book, which you read from. I need to find it again on my screen share. Here it is. So here it is, everybody. It is called The Optimist Shelters in Place, and it is a book written during the pandemic. So check it out. You can buy it right at the publisher's website, and the publisher is Good Harbor Press. Do I have that correct?
Small Harbor.
Small Harbor Press. There it is. Small Harbor Publishing, and there it is. You just click that link, and you can check the book out, and you can buy it. So it's wonderful stuff. And also make sure that if that's not your cup of tea, Kimberly's got 9 other books, and I really liked The Slaughter of One Bird, and I have a copy of that you graciously sent to me. And so thank you for being our guest, Kimberly Ann Priest.
You're welcome.
And all you folks that are watching the stream in the Facebook group, thank you for watching. And if you would like to be part of the now coming open mic, you're gonna have to click the link and join us in here. Otherwise, come back next week when our guest is Cyan Griffiths. Thank you, Kimberly.